Okay, so great page for adding things to your notes. Again, this is a 1.35 memory, storage, and so on, storage devices, and it's probably this part on the left here that people struggle with most when you're actually needing to describe the different type of memory and how data is written and accessed on there. So let's just go through everything here in turn. So we've got optical media that uses one spiral track. So optical, I'm already thinking CD, DVD, Blu-ray, using lasers. So we've got red lasers, which rules out Blu-ray. Used to read and write data on the media surface, uses dual layering technology to increase the storage capacity. So that means that it's not CD, it's obviously not Blu-ray because it's using a red laser, which really only leaves us with the one potential, which is a DVD. Now, we know that it's not directly accessed by the CPU, it is not internal to the computer system, which means it's offline storage. Obviously it's portable, we can take that with us. A non-volatile chip's already, I think, ROM. Contents of the chip cannot be altered further. Accessing something to do with ROM, often used to store the startup routines in a computer, e.g. the BIOS, which is the basic input-output operating system, the first thing that's run when your computer starts up. It's ROM, and we should hopefully remember that it's primary memory. Optical media, which uses concentric tracks. So optical, again, we're going back to lasers here, so we're thinking DVD, CD, or Blu-ray. It uses concentric tracks to store the data, allowing read and write operations to be carried out at the same time. Well, I know that's not CD, I know it's not Blu-ray, and it's actually that funny category of DVD RAM, where we've got the ability to record and write at the same time. And that's what if you've got it anyway, the TV boxes that you can watch a channel whilst you record 3 others use. This is a funny one because it kind of is offline storage, and the fact that it's RAM though also is primary. I think I'll check the marking scheme again to see. I think you get the marks for either or there, optional one, but it's because it's RAM, it is directly accessed by the processor. Okay, next one, non-volatile memory device which uses NAND flash memories, millions of transistors in series on a single circuit board. Well, I'm thinking solid state device right there, so solid state drive we could go for. You could also say actually SD card, that would be fine. Any solid state memory, USB would work there as well actually. So depending on what you pick actually, if you went for solid state drive, which is built into your computer system, that would obviously be secondary. But then if you chose USB, that answers the question, but it's obviously offline, and so is SD card, because those are obviously portable and removable. So that one's got a couple of options. And then we've got last one, optical media, blue laser. Reading the rest of it, these are the things that you want to get into your notes. You need to be able to quote all of the stuff that's really deliciously highlighted really well, that I'm doing again just to make the more annoying, I can't talk, more obvious the stuff you need to know, and make it ridiculously hard to read. So anyway, that one there is obviously Blu-ray using a blue laser, which can basically fit in more data in the same space compared to red laser, and that is offline storage. A lot tricky, but should be basic theory, but this part over here is obviously the difficult part, which everyone seems to struggle with. It doesn't do anything. Okay, two differences in Blu-rays and DVDs. So DVD uses red laser, Blu-ray uses blue, which has shorter wavelength. I hope that's the correct physics, i.e. you can fit more in. Now for these, should have done things before I started. Describe Blu-ray and looked at that. So I'm looking for two well-made points here. So you could also say that DVD uses dual layer. Blu-ray uses one. Now that's probably exam technique right there, if people would write this part and not actually tell me the important part, because that first part of the answer there doesn't explain that the other one doesn't use quadruple layer. What else we got? I guess probably a better one is Blu-ray is a higher storage capacity. There will be others. You could talk about the fact that Blu-ray's got built in. Okay, quite an important one here that we know what we've got. DVD RAM, and exam technique's important here because people will leave parts out. So DVD RAM has several concentric tracks. That answer does not tell us the second half of the answer, which people miss, which is that DVD-R has one spiral track. DVD RAM can read, write simultaneously. And again, people stop there. We need, however, or the comparison part. So DVD-R, the R stands for recordable. So you can burn on it once and then only read from it. What else could we have? So read, write, written to at the same time. DVD-R only lets you write it once. Possibly DVD RAM, you got a greater capacity there, but the big important ones is that there's several concentric and spiral tracks, and then like the read operation occurring simultaneously with the write operation on DRAM. Okay, so we've got a remote control car scenario, seen this before. So we've got RAM, ROM, solid state. It gets radio signals from the remote control. It can only receive radio signals of a certain frequency. The manufacturer sets this frequency and the owner cannot change it. The owner of the model car can input their own sequence of movements from an interface underneath the car. So I think we saw this in the other input devices question. So describe the purpose of each of the three types of memory supplied with the car. Let's go with the easy one, ROM. Stores the radio frequencies which cannot be changed. You could also talk there about it storing the BIOS, basic input output operating system, which is the operating systems. RAM, when the programs are running on it, it's going to store that's currently used. So stores currently in use instructions and data. And then solid state drives is going to, that's where the things that go into RAM are saved whilst they're not being used. So keywords stores here for lots of these. Currently in use for the previous ones, the important part. So stores, instructions for the operation of the car when not in use, we can say not in use. Long term, some words to that effect for that one. Similar idea again here, same question, stream, explain why we're using solid state, and explain looking at the 2 marks for these things. So similar to what we had in previous questions, no moving parts, uses less electricity. Now there's 2 points right away. It's got faster access times. Now, that's not enough to get me 2 marks because I haven't actually explained the points. No moving parts, so more robust. The car is lighter, uses less electricity, therefore you would need to have it generating less heat, so it's less likely to be damaged, I guess, or be a lot safer to pick up and put down and so on. So the explain part, make a point and then make an explanation as to why. You can go for 3 if you want, that's absolutely not. So we've got 180 megabytes of storage system being recorded, and that's for 1 minute of video. The recording system can store several hours of video footage. Name and describe a suitable storage medium for this one. I guess for this one, we could say magnetic tape. So that's named, described. It's high capacity. Storage, good for backups because they might not need to store the data on there, but you could have anything in there. Solid state drive could be good, as could a hard disk drive. There's lots of answers as long as you go into a good description again in the question stem that people miss and looking at the marks there. So we get 1 mark for choosing a device that works, high capacity storage, good for backups, and it's got good access times and it's reasonably priced. Okay, next one, depends when you're watching this, gigabytes might be back to 1,000 is the number you want to use in the exam, but not to be confused with other units. So without calculators, this is going to be tricky. So we've got 2 hours of video footage. Show all your working. So even if you're doing parts in your head, don't just get it all written down. So we know what 1 minute is. So you do 2 times 60 equals 120 minutes. Do this in as much space as you need. Do it in pencil, double check it in the exam. So 120 minutes, we need to do it 120 minutes times by 180 megs, which is, let's see, 21,600 megabytes. Now we want our answer in gigabytes here. Now this is where it can be tricky. Now if you're a great mathematician, many of you guys probably are, you could take 21,600 and divide it by 1024 and you wouldn't be wrong. It would take me a long time to sit and do the long division on that. What you can do is you could estimate it and do 21,600 divided by 1,000 to give us, that'd be 21.6 gigabytes. It's approximately the same. It will be ever so slightly lower in real life because this is something like 21.1 gigabytes or something like that. But look at the amount of work you've got to do for 2 marks here. These take practice and they're always the same pattern. Just be careful if it's bits to bytes, divide by 8 or divide by 1,000 in all the other cases. And try and think of this in terms of mathematics. You know, it's really just working out the area that something takes up when you boil it down to it. Of 180 megabytes of storage is a specific size and you need 2 hours worth of it. Try and put it into a context that makes sense to you. Okay, again, good things for notes. Let's do this one real quick because we already covered it. Go down to columns. Which ones have got a single track? Well, DVD RW does, CD does, and Blu-ray does. Many concentric tracks, that's only for DVD RAM. Blue laser to read stuff is only for Blu-ray, and then red laser for these other ones. Easy peasy, but that's the things that we need to be able to describe. That's a good question, nice easy one. Solid state drives are replacing hard disk drives in some computers. Give reasons why. So I guess if you want to be super nerdy, less latency, speed up quickly. They've basically got instant access. We can say they are cooler, i.e. less electricity. They are quieter, more robust. Now that's actually a couple of different ones you could put in there. Faster data access speeds. What else we got there? Smaller physically. Now the only negative, which is obviously not part of this question, is that they are higher cost per bit at the moment. Maybe in the future that'll change. They're lighter, smaller, faster access speeds. Capacity is normally smaller, but again, you could always buy like a 2 terabyte solid state drive versus a 1 terabyte hard disk drive. But obviously the price per bit is the difference in that. Explain why many web servers still use HDD technology. Well, it's cheaper per bit for high storage, for high capacity. What else? It's got a greater, well, not greater, what do we want to say? A longer lifespan. Lifespan for reading and writing data. What else there? People already have them already, so it's going to be expensive to upgrade. Thinking about the amount of data we use, the access speed, etc. All of the factors is fit for purpose. So basically, it does what we need it to do at the moment. So there's not really a huge demand to do so until the requirements change. Maybe like we may need 3D immersion and so on. Things might change. Okay, I think we've pretty much covered this one. Again, let's go through it. So non-volatile memory can be read from and not written to. Read-only memory. So ROM. Optical media that uses very high storage. Blu-ray. We see the Blu right away. So Blu-ray. Volatile that stores data, programs, and parts of the OS currently in use. RAM. Optical storage media, single spiral track, and uses dual layer technology. So we want DVD. For that one, any one of the combinations you could have, so DVD-R, DVD-ROM, DVD is totally fine. Not DVD-RAM, because obviously that's totally different. Device that stores data by controlling the movement, electrons from a microchip, no moving parts, is solid state. Drive, you could also say USB storage device as well would be fine, because they all use the NAND chips. Optical storage media that uses concentric tracks, allowing reading and writing to take place at the same time. There's our DVD RAM. Excellent. Explain why it's better to use DVD RAM in this scenario when you're recording television programs. So this is what I reference for DVD RAM a lot. Viewing these programs doesn't want to keep using DVD RAM as optical storage. So because the DVD is written on like one spiral track like this, whereas there's multiple concentric tracks on the DVD RAM, you've got what we hopefully remember from a while ago is where you've got direct access on RAM to data, and you can read, write at the same time. And that's obviously on RAM as well, which means you can record a program whilst you're watching another, and many of them actually allow you to do that multiple channels at the same time. CDRWs, back-end media and flash memories for computers give two differences. So this one we can just state things. So flash memory, so we've got solid state versus optical. The CD requires a drive, as in it gets a CD drive to read it. It's slower access, speeds, data transfer rates, maybe is a better word to use there than speeds. Data is burnt, so the write process we could talk about there needs to be finalised, so you get a direct transfer via a USB port, which is a standard normally, or I guess it is standard on all devices now, so that you can do that. These are good straightforward ones. Hopefully these are the ones that come up, but then again, it's the tricky ones that make the difference. So computers get two types of memory. Something memory is not directly accessed by the CPU, so that's obviously secondary, but allows the user to store data can easily accessed by applications. Two examples of this memory are something and something, so we've used secondary. Two examples of it, there we go, there's HDD and solid state devices, so we get HDD and SSD. The second type of memory is, and this is directly accessed by the CPU, so the directly accessed one is primary. Obviously, if I'm scoring it out with a pencil, it's a bit easier. So second type of memory, somewhere interrupted and I've lost my space, is primary. That's where we got to. Primary memory. And it's directly accessed by the CPU. It allows the processor to access data and instructions, that's fetch execute cycle, that are stored in this memory. Two examples of primary are RAM and ROM. Straightforward, nice hopefully for you guys. Give two examples of primary, secondary and offline storage. So RAM and ROM are the only two primary. Secondary, we could have HDD, SDD, anything, SSD, sorry, and USB flash drive, and CD, DVD, external hard drive. There's many for that one. Importantly, that these two pretty much limited, as are the secondary storage. And remember that these are directly accessed and they're part of the CPU itself. Another one, primary. So examples of each, we just did the examples, so let's just go over the descriptions. So it's directly accessed by the CPU. So that's internal, and that's where we have all the registers when we look at the fetch execute cycle. Another thing, you could say that that's the main memory. Just putting all the things we know in. Secondary storage, it's, I guess actually we could put here that it's a mix of volatile and non-volatile. Secondary, we could say it's long term, and it's also non-volatile. Obviously, we don't want to erase when we turn it off. It's a device that's part of a computer system. So it's normally internal to your computer, your SSD, that's built into your laptops and so on. And then offline storage is going to be non-volatile again, but the big difference is it can be removed, which is USBs and so on. Portable might be a good thing to expand on there. Okay, another calculation, got to get these correct. Let's see, so we've got a set of photographs taken for a wedding. All the guests are to be sent digitally stored copies through the ordinary postal service, so we're posting photographs, but they're digital. There's 50 photographs, and each photograph's between 1.8 and 2.5 megabytes inside. Work out the maximum storage space required for a set of photographs. Okay, so in that case they're trying to just make it slightly more tricky. We've got 50 photographs that are maximum 2.5 megabytes. So our first calculation is for that. So in total, that's going to be straightforward enough. It's going to be 125 megabytes. What could that fit on? Well, I guess lots we could put on a CD are a low capacity USB or flash memory. Reasons: it's CD, perhaps not actually, it's not the best one for mailing, to be fair. I guess then it's robust, small for posting, and relatively inexpensive. So it would probably, I mean, it's a bit silly, but it'd be quite expensive to buy lots of DVDs for it, plus a waste of memory. So we want whatever works with the lowest amount of memory. Describe how data is read from a CD. So let's start off with the basics. We know that it uses a red laser, yeah, and that's shone onto the surface of the disc. Yeah, we know that it is rotated, the disc that is, and it speeds up and slows down depending, because it needs to be a constant rate. So disc's rotated, disc spinning, something like that one. The CD has one spiral track. It uses pits and lands to represent 0 and 1. I guess maybe a 0 and 1 binary values might be important to say there, as long as I get the 0 and 1 across. So pits, people keep interrupting. Pits reflect less light because they're like a hole in the ground, so it's dark, so less light. Reflect less light back to light sensor, which interprets the binary value. So there's quite a lot there, there's about 7 or 8 points. As long as you get 4 in this case, then you'll be doing great. We'll stop coming into the class. Oh, okay. Differences between primary and secondary. So RAM, ROM, the SSD, and the HDD. That's a mix of volatile and non versus non-volatile. Directly accessed versus not directly accessed. What else? This stores file plus software, and RAM and ROM. So ROM is going to store the BIOS and instructions as they're being executed. What else can we say there? Faster access over this side for RAM and ROM, look immediate and ridiculously fast. These could be, well, primary is going to be internal to the OS. Okay, should be enough to go on there anyway. Let's see, right, primary, secondary are offline next to each storage device to indicate its most suitable category. Well, let's do the ones that are easy first. RAM and ROM, primary. CD-ROM is going to be portable, so that's going to be offline. DVD-RAM is going to be offline. HDD is secondary, it's normally built in. Just be careful it doesn't say external in any of these, and secondary for that one too. So one other item stored in RAM, be careful here, because if you look at the marks, it's 2. And people would probably stop short of saying something like the instructions, which is 1 mark, that are currently in use. So at the moment I have, what's the program called again? Explain.edu open in this browser, or on this, in RAM. plus all the other tabs that I have open and other applications I've got open, so it's important to say the ones that are currently in use. 3 different ways that RAM is different to ROM. So RAM is volatile. We can use permanent and temporary. Now that on its own is not enough to get the mark because it doesn't tell us what ROM is. So we obviously need to say that ROM's permanent. We could say that RAM has larger capacity of memory, especially the more modern ones it's even higher difference. And let's see, ROM cannot edit, you can only read from it, and you can obviously write to RAM. So be careful when you're explaining, you need to give both sides. So saying RAM is volatile doesn't tell us about ROM. Very important that you give both sides to the explanation. So let's see, explain what is meant by secondary storage and offline storage. We've already covered secondary storage, so it's not directly accessed by the processor. It's also non-volatile. And it's internal to the computer system we're working in. And for this, give examples like a hard disk drive. Offline storage, also non-volatile. It's removable from the device that it's in. So good example, USB flash drive or an external hard drive. Or any other examples that are correct. Let's see, different units of data, fill in the ones that are missing. So I remember my phrase, big naughty boys kicked my granny twice. Now if you're watching this after the course has changed, it's still correct. Either it's kilobyte or kibibytes, which is very similar except gigabytes 1000. But the kibibytes, what we really use is 1024. Okay, so big naughty boys kick my granny twice, so I need an N here, which is nibble. Boys is bytes. Kilobyte, megabyte. I'm sure you don't need the phrase anymore if you've done it so long. Gigabyte. So say the phrase, gigabytes, easy. Let's see, 3 similarities between CDs and DVDs. So in this case we can just state things like they both use optical media, which is lasers. They are both offline storage, i.e. portable, removable. They both use red lasers. What else? We could say single spiral track, amongst some others. So we've seen these ones before: primary, secondary, offline storage. So we can see that that's a question that happens more often than others. Hopefully you can answer that one fairly straightforward. We've seen, well, I think we've seen this one before, but let's just go through. External HDD, be careful, there's the trick. People say HDD and think it's secondary because it's external. RAM's primary, internal, SSD is secondary, ROM we know is directly accessed, and then DVD offline, removable. Explaining how data is written to optical storage media. We already covered in that previous question. So again, we've got that disk that is obviously spun. We've got that single spiral where we make the indentations on the surface where the points we want to put data, and it's called burning. So just go back over that one again. Pits and lands gives us the ones and the zeros. It's burnt in using a laser. Don't talk about red or blue because well, you could mention red or blue laser depending which one it is, but this one doesn't make any specifics. Video is captured on a device attached to the drone. So this one is solid state for the reasons that become apparent in the next part of the question. So it's durable, which is not enough to get me the marks. We need to explain that there's no moving parts. Also, you can have off that it uses less electricity. It's going to be lighter, less, so that obviously explain these. So the drone can fly longer. It's smaller, so the drone can be smaller, uses less electricity and so on. Just make sure you explain the choices there and give clear examples. So we've got RAM and ROM again. We've really already covered this one. Stores programs currently in use. RAM, used to boot up the computer when the power is turned on. That's ROM. That's where we keep saying the BIOS system coming back up. And contents retained when the power's turned off. ROM, because it's read-only and it's permanent. Circle the storage category includes RAM and ROM, so that's primary. Easy. Offline storage, I think we've covered this one as well. So it's non-volatile, removable, really good writing there, removable storage. So give an example, e.g. Blu-ray. And what do we use it for? Used for long-term backups, whatever it happens to be. Try and give 4 points for that, or 3 points for that one if you can. So difference between RAM and ROM, we already covered. We've got temporary, the permanent, volatile, and non-volatile. Right, volatile. We've got read-only, whereas we've got read and write. And boot up instructions. Versus current instructions and use. You can circle them and line them up with which one's which. So temporary is obviously RAM, permanent ROM. How about these? Didn't say which one's which. Have some fun for the 4 marks to fill that one out. Which type of media would be best to create 150 gigs of backup? So we need something that is removable if we're going to have a backup and with enough capacity. So a CD, not going to have enough data. We could have something that's large capacity, but we want something that's going to write quickly, so probably not optical media. So a good answer for this one, possibly an external hard disk drive. Justification for it, store it separately in another location. Obviously storing off-site backups really important. You could say something like a USB flash drive as long as it's got enough capacity, so talk about having the capacity to that. And again, similar question, storage device for storing applications on a tablet. For that one we could have SSD, which is built into this one. Justification for it, it's small physically. What else? Quiet, low power usage, low heat, and it's got fast read write times. Honestly, for 2 marks we only need 1 or 2 of those. 1200 megabytes of high definition promotional movies about a new car, and it's to be given to people interested in buying a new car. So I guess for that one, DVD would be suitable. There's lots here. You could also have Blu-ray, and I guess SD card or flash drive, lots of options there. And cheap, they are kind of almost universal. perhaps more so the SD card and flash drives. Small, portable, anything that justifies your choice there is perfect. Which has got 20 megabytes in size. Jordan's got a file that's 10 gigabit in size. Tick to show, which is a larger file. Well, hopefully that one's straightforward enough. 10 gigabytes, way more than 20 bytes. Similar questions again. 3,500 kilobytes versus 3 megabytes. So for this one, a little bit of maths on this. If we divide it by 1,000, will tell us it's 3.5 megabytes, give or take. So in this case, it's 3,500. Similar question as to before, let's just go through it quickly. SSD, no external, so that's secondary. Blu-ray, offline. USB, offline. Random access and ROM are both prime. Describe how magnetic storage devices uses data. So remember, that's the diagram where we've got all of these. This is a great diagram. So we've got all of these platters, and each of those platters is then further split up into tracks. And again, these discs spin, or the platters spin, but you also have at each point, which I'll try and draw with a different colour, a read-write head. And if we look at the one we've got in class, we've got quite a lot of them that we use. So the disc spins and the read-write arm moves across. It uses electromagnets to write the data, and that magnetic determines the data, whether it's 1 or 0. You can talk about for reading the data, it just obviously magnetizes either positive or negatively. That's determined for the binary value. Tricky question for 6 marks. So these are the typical questions that require a lot of reading. 2 advantages of magnetic storage rather than solid state. So this is one where people would stop after they say magnetic is cheaper, but you could easily go and buy a solid state storage device for $1,000 and then pay $1,200 for a magnetic storage device, which means it's not cheaper. What you really mean in this scenario is magnetic is cheaper per bit storage. And the lifespan, or the number of read-write cycles on magnetic is longer. I did skip a few examples. Explain why the company chose magnetic rather than solid state. I think we've covered this one, so let's just summarise. Longevity, cheaper per bit. This is the same one that was in for servers actually. So cheaper per unit bits. Read-write speed is sufficient, and it's fit for purpose, i.e. it's been used long enough so people know it works. Servers, it doesn't matter that it's physically larger, however it's not being moved, so you can buy it, stick it in a cupboard and not worry about it. Three different types of optical storage: DVD, CD, Blu-ray. Explain offline storage. I think we've done that one before. Offline storage is disconnected from computer. I think we covered this one. And it's portable. Non-volatile, i.e. it stores the data after the power's been turned off. Long-term storage. Give examples here to support your answer, always good. Primary, Hopefully we've got that one down now. RAM and ROM, easy. 2 examples of secondary storage, hard disk drive and solid state drives. Just be careful any questions if they mention external, that would be incorrect. However, you could use this same answer and write external on your answer and make it correct. 2 differences between DVD and a Blu-ray. So obviously red v blue, I think we covered this one already. Red v blue laser. DVD, a smaller capacity. Let's see, DVD with the 2 layers. And DVD is a lower transfer rate. For 2 marks, there's 4 potential answers for you. Another calculation, make sure you show all your work in here because you can pick up marks even if you get it incorrect. So we've got image 500 pixels by 300 pixels, and it tells us that every pixel on there is 8 bits storage, or 8-bit color depth, sorry. So it uses 1 byte per pixel. So we've got 500 times 300 to calculate the number of pixels, and so that gives us 150,000 pixels. Now you could waste time multiplying it by 8, but then we're immediately going to divide by 8, so those just cancel one another out to give us 150,000 bytes. Now really we would divide by 1024, but it's okay in the exam to divide by 1000 to estimate, which is going to give us 150 kilobytes, which would then divide by 1000 again, which would give us our final answer of 0.15 megabytes, which is much easier than dividing by 1024. So for the exam, just use 1000 to estimate the answer. ROM, we already talked about, it's permanent, it's volatile, it stores the BIOS, it's non-volatile rather. Read-only memory, we can't write to it, and it stores the startup instructions for the computer system, and it's primary memory. And again, we can see that this question's been before, what's the difference between primary and secondary? Obviously RAM and ROM for this one. HDD, SDD, talk about accessing directly, talk about the fact that primary is volatile and non-volatile, whereas secondary is all non-volatile, otherwise all our programs would be gone when we turn things off. Secondary storage, HDD, we've seen that in lots. Straightforward true-false one here, so 25 kilobytes larger than 100 megabytes, false. Nearly 1000 megabytes larger than 50 gigabytes, also false. 3500 kilobytes smaller than 2 gig, true, much smaller. And we've got 2350 bytes smaller than 2 kilobytes, so we need to do the math on that one. So that would be 2048 kilobytes. So this one, whereas that's 2350, so that's false because 2350 is ever so slightly more. State what RAM, ROM and SSD are used for. I think we covered this one, so that's instructions in use. ROM, BIOS, it stores the startup instructions, which are obviously loaded immediately when we turn the power on in the bootstrap loader. And SSD, storing files, e.g. sound, videos, etc. There we go, straightforward, 3 marks hopefully. Let's see, SSD and a mobile device. Again, similar things we said before, it's got faster read-write speeds, it's smaller, lighter, more portable, uses less energy, it's going to be quieter, the battery will last longer on it, It's cooler, which means it's going to cause less heat in your pocket. I think we've covered that one before, so have a look back. Two storage devices that may be used in a library system. Should be straightforward enough, just pick any. So hard disk drive for storing scanned photos of the book's front cover, and I guess here other storage devices that we could say are CDs to store backups of the barcodes, or it could be USB flash drives. I think literally anything goes there for two storage devices. Let's see, describe what is meant by main memory and how is it used in the von Neumann model for a computer system. So RAM, we can mention here, it's primary, it's volatile, and it stores the current instructions being executed, and it's directly accessed by the CPU. Similarities between HDD, DVD, they are both secondary, they are both non-volatile, they are both high capacity, and they are both read and write capable, unlike ROM. Explain three differences now between the two of them. So SSD, no moving parts. HDD does. Just state the obvious on these ones. HDD is magnetic. SSD is flash NAND chips. Let's see, HDD slower access speeds. The HDD also longer longevity. I think we've covered this one lots. It's also heavier and cheaper per bit, the HDD. And it's larger physical size as well. Normally HDD is got a greater capacity as well, but again you could pay for one SSD drive that has got more capacity. Identify one offline storage device she could use to transport the files. Great. USB flash drive. How many times have we written that one? SD card, totally fine as well. Perfect, easy.